Yo, what is up guys? Delboy here, aka Blue Collar Sports TV. Hopefully you guys are doing well. If you're new here, smash that like, hit subscribe, all of that good stuff. So this past weekend, Jake Paul fought Tyrone Woodley in a fight in which he won by a split decision over 8 rounds. And obviously when Jake Paul fights, it creates a big debate in the boxing world amongst hardcore boxing fans. You know, I see the rhetoric in regards to how Jake Paul is a disgrace to boxing, how he's taking away from the sport, and all in all, how he is just bad for boxing. You know, these guys are going on like Jake Paul is the worst thing in boxing right now, and that Jake Paul is the worst thing happening to boxing right now. But in reality, these guys, in my opinion, couldn't be more wrong. Now, I'm not saying I co-sign what Jake Paul is doing. I'm not saying I like him, because quite frankly, I don't. But ultimately, I don't really believe Jake Paul is either good or bad for the sport. I don't think Jake Paul will change the way boxing is. For the most part, he's not going to change the way boxing is structured or anything like that. When it's all said and done, I think Jake Paul's influence on boxing will be minute to insignificant. Ultimately, Jake Paul is taking advantage of a gap in the market. He's taking advantage of a fractured sport. A sport that is fractured from the very top to the very bottom. At the very top, we have sanctioning bodies who are literally coercing with fighters who have failed drug tests in order to essentially clean that fighter's name. At the top, we have promoters not willing to work with each other to make the best fights. We heard what Mayweather said about Tank Davis. He said that he's not going to fight anybody outside the PBC and the Al Haymon roster, when in reality, his main rivals are on the other side. Teofimo Lopez, Vasily Lomachenko, Ryan Garcia, Devin Haney. These guys are all elsewhere, and obviously these are the fights that fans want to see the most, but Mayweather's out here saying these fights are not going to happen. Now that sort of thing is a fucking disgrace to boxing. That's a problem in boxing, not some cunt from YouTube, Jake Paul. Before boxing and boxing fans criticise someone like Jake Paul, I suggest that boxing gets its own house in order before criticising someone like Jake Paul. And it goes from the very top, you know, promoters, TV network, sanctioning bodies, all the way down to the fans. Because fans co-sign a lot of this bullshit. And we see that on YouTube, every single side. PBC fans, Matchroom fans, Top Rank fans, whoever fans. A lot of these cunts fucking co-sign this nonsense. Every time I go on fucking YouTube, I hear some cunt talk about pay-per-view numbers. You see, the PBC fans, they'll co-sign what Mayweather said about Tank Davis. They'll be happy with it. They'll co-sign it. And they'll be happy with Tank Davis fighting some spastic like Rolly Romero, and they'll clap like seals. You know, this is the problem with boxing. It's fractured from top to bottom. Promoters are not willing to work with each other. Sanctioning bodies are all jacked up, numerous belts, bullshit fucking mandatories, bullshit rankings, obviously as well TV networks not willing to work with each other, and all of the way down to the boxing fan. Right? Us, here on the YTBC. Now, we're not going to agree on everything when it comes to boxing, and in life in general. We're not going to agree on everything. A lot of us have differences. A lot of us are from different places, have different cultures, etc, etc. But as boxing fans, one thing we should all agree on is that we want the best product possible. But we can't even fucking agree on that. Every time I criticise Matchroom for a bullshit fight, oh, you're a Matchroom hater, you hate Matchroom. These cunts are more concerned with defending Eddie Hearn and Matchroom than actually looking at the product in which they're putting out. That's what they're more concerned with, what somebody says about Eddie Hearn. Can you imagine? I'm a boxing fan, all I want to see is good fucking fights. I mean, I remember when the PBC first came along back in, what year was it? Was it 2014? Something like that. But when the PBC first came along, the whole concept was great in America, boxing on free TV. I thought, oh, that sounds great, that's a great way to grow the sport. That was my initial thoughts. But after I saw a few PBC shows, for the most part they weren't great. There was a lot of mismatches, and these fighters were getting overpaid for basically fighting bums. There were good fights, don't get me wrong, but a lot of these fights were fucking complete garbage, and the guys were getting overpaid for taking these fights. I was critical at the time in regards to a lot of that product. And of course, at the time, oh, you're a hater, Del Boy, blah, 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 blah. You're just a fucking hater. You just don't like Al Heyman for whatever reason. And you know what those reasons were in which they accused me of. But funnily enough, fast forward 6-7 years, and those same cunts who accused me of hating on Al Heyman are now criticising Al Heyman. Work that one out. These guys were just 6 or 7 years late to the party. I saw the problem or potential problems with PBC very early on, as did a lot of people, and these people received the exact same treatment I did for criticising Al Heyman. And now skip forward, I'm criticising Eddie Hearn occasionally, and, again, the same fucking accusations. Oh, you're just a hater. I'm a boxing fan. All I want is a good product. I understand every card can't be stacked from top to bottom, but there's certain standards, and sometimes those standards are not met, and when they're not met, I will criticise certain shows. It really is that fucking simple. Maybe in 6 or 7 years' time, these guys are going to be saying what I'm saying about Eddie Hearn right now. I see parallels with the launch of DAZN and the launch of a PBC. Guys getting overpaid for bum fights. Guys like Tevin Farmer getting paid millions to fight fucking James Tennyson, who's a fucking scrub. At world level, he's a fucking scrub. Demetrius Andrade getting paid silly money to fight Walter Calton Dockwah, whoever the fuck that is. I mean, come on, people. And I mean, that's why Demetrius Andrade is talking about fighting Jason Quigley next. He's going to get paid silly money to fight a fucking bum. Listen, Andrade, yeah, he's a hard sell, he can't get fights, but who's called him out recently? Yanni Beck, Alim Kanuli. Very good prospect, really good up-and-comer. Why not take that fight? It's a lot better than fucking Jason Quigley, but this guy's been spoilt, being paid millions to fight bums, so why would he fight Yanni Beck? This is the problem with boxing, not Jake Paul. Jake Paul is just a symptom of a bigger problem, a fractured fucking sport from top to bottom, right? You got Joe Smith Jr., that cunt. I mean, Joe Smith Jr. gets a robbery decision against Maxim Vlasov. At that point in time, you're thinking to yourself, either a rematch with Vlasov or a unification fight with Artur Beterbiev. Are either of those fights happening? Absolutely not. Joe Smith Jr. has his next 2 fights planned out. He's fighting Umar Salamov, who's for mandatory, and then Danny Jacobs at 175. Who the fuck wants to see that bullshit, apart from a few cunts in New York? We want to see Beterbiev versus Joe Smith Jr., unification, at the very least, a rematch between Joe Smith and Maxim Vlasov. Let's talk about Conor Benn. Conor Benn, right? I was very critical of Conor Benn when he turned pro. I didn't really believe he looked all that good, to be honest. And I kind of felt he was getting by on his dad's name. But to his credit, he stuck with it, he got in the gym, and he got better. And, even recently I was praising Conor Benn. I felt he was getting better with each fight. I felt he was taking the necessary step-ups. Guys like Sebastian Formela, I felt he looked good, he performed well. He did well against Samuel Vargas. No problem, man, he's slowly stepping up. Not much amateur background, fair enough. And he needs development fights, no problem at all. I'm all on board. But recently, this guy has said he wants to fight for the European title, and what Matchroom did, they went to David Avanesian and asked David Avanesian to vacate, promised Avanesian a bigger fight, essentially so Conor Benn could fight for the vacant European title against a bum. Listen, if Conor Benn wants to fight for the European title, he knows who's got it, and that's David Avanesian. If he wants to fight for the European title, fight David Avanesian. But instead, we're out here talking about fucking ring around the rosies, make fucking Avanesian vacate, get him a bigger fight, and then Conor Benn fights for a vacant title against a scrub. What's all that about? Why not just make Conor Benn Avanesian? Great fucking fight. In the UK, people would be hyped in the boxing world. Great fight. But can we get that fight? No, of course not. They want the easy way to get the European title. They want to kayfabe their way to world level, essentially. That's what they're trying to do with Conor Benn. That's what it seems like right now. I mean, Eddie Hearn recently said that Conor Benn's numbers are so good, they're not going to put him in a 50-50 right now. I mean, that tells you all you need to know. But if I point that out, or somebody else points that out, you're a Matchroom hater. That's the problem with boxing. Jake Paul is just a symptom of a broken and fractured sport at the end of the day. That's all he is. You know, again, I don't like it personally, but there are bigger problems in boxing. And the sad thing for me, personally, as a boxing fan, the sad thing for me is that boxing fans are part of a problem. Again, just look at the YTBC, look at boxing on social media, in particular Twitter. You've got guys out here who are basically cheering the political divide, accepting it, embracing it, and reveling in it, really. They'll be out here counting their favourite fighters' money, counting their social media followers, but I don't hear these guys put any pressure on their favourite fighter to take certain fights, or express outrage when someone like Mayweather says, oh, Tank Davis is going to fight only PBC fighters. There's a certain section of fans who cheer this sort of nonsense, and it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing from top to bottom. So these clowns who suck dick for a certain promotional company, whether it be fans or content creators, I don't want to hear these guys talk bad about Jake Paul and say how he's bad for boxing. You're fucking bad for boxing. How about that? Like I said, this sport is fractured from top to bottom. Honestly, at this point in time, I don't really know why I still follow boxing. I guess boxing to me is like, you know that chick who, you know you shouldn't fuck with, but you do anyway, because her pussy's that good. That's what boxing's like to me. You know, despite all of the fuckery, I still love it. And I will always love boxing, and I plan on continuing covering it, you know, when in reality, my time when I'm not working is best served elsewhere. To be honest, I can be far more productive elsewhere, which will result in far greater positives for me personally. But I love boxing, and I'll always love boxing. But yeah, I mean, I'm going on a bit of a rant now. I'm kind of losing track of what I was even going to talk about in this video. I was going to go elsewhere, but yeah, the whole situation really, boxing in 2021, is just extremely frustrating. And again, these people out here saying Jake Paul is a disgrace, how many of these people still covered the event? I never did a preview, I never did a prediction, I never did a live commentary, because quite frankly, I couldn't care less about that fight. I couldn't care less about Jake Paul. To me, in the grand scheme of things, he's irrelevant. But again, how many of these people do you see who are criticising Jake Paul, saying how he's a disgrace? How many of these people, content creators, still covered the event? Did post-fights or did live commentaries? How many? You guys tell me. You guys tell me. But let's finish on the YTBC. As far as I'm concerned, the YTBC, for the most part, is a complete dumpster fire. It's full of cliques and cults with unhinged individuals who will push certain narratives, whether it be just fanboying for certain promoters, certain networks, or even deeper than that, they'll be basically creating their content around identity politics. That's what most of the YTBC is, man. A lot of these guys are probably social rejects, and, you know, they probably want to feel part of something. They've never been part of something in real life, so they'll jump on this YTBC thing, jump in a clique, circle jerk, and have a merry old time. Reality is 90% of these channels are fucking complete garbage. This whole YTBC thing's a complete joke, and, you know, that's why in recent months I've really kind of just, you know, kept to myself, quite frankly. There are people out there who I rate, who I've got love for. Those people know who they are. If I see you in live streams, I'll always shout you out. You guys know who you are. So again, this is not at everybody, but just me expressing my frustrations with boxing and the community as a whole. Again, my biggest disappointment is with the fans, you know. Again, I can't really change anything. All I can really do is sit here and moan on YouTube about the current boxing scene in 2021. But all I would say to people is, at the end of the day, think of yourself as a consumer, not a fan, just a consumer of a product. And ask yourself, is the product delivering in 2021? I would say no. I would say no. But there we go. That's just my opinion. If anybody doesn't like it, if you feel it applies to you, then that's your problem. It's not my problem. But hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. This channel, as I mentioned maybe a month ago, or whatever, I am going to change things up how I do this channel. I'll be a lot more critical. I'll be a lot more glass half empty. Again, not to an unrealistic expectation. If it's a prospect, I'm not going to expect a prospect to fight a killer. You know, I just kind of expect gradual step-ups and good matchmaking. I'm not going to be unrealistic, but I'm not going to be so glass half full. I feel like before I was always relatively positive, because I wanted to see the best from this sport. I've always seen this sport as something beautiful, but I probably need to highlight the ugly a little more than I do. And yeah, I'm just going to change the way I do this channel a little bit. There's going to be the same sort of content, like post-fight reviews and things like that, predictions. Those sort of videos will be the same, but just expect more of these sort of videos in the future and more critical analysis, maybe more harsh analysis. But yeah, I just want to change things up because I think it's relevant, I think it's needed, and not only for the good of the sport, but you know, for my own enjoyment of making content in regards to boxing. I need to spice it up a little bit. I mean, I've got no idea why I kind of censored myself previously in regards to how I spoke. Trying to be more professional. That's really not me, you know. I'm kind of rough around the edges. I'm a working class boy kind of thing. So I think I'm going to let that side out a lot more in the future. When it comes to like predictions, I'll do the same sort of thing. I'll be down the middle. I'll be professional in regards to that sort of video. But, you know, maybe a few more rants, things like that, more critical analysis. Again, I'm just kind of freeballing right now ideas in regards to this channel. So stay tuned. One thing I am grateful for, though, is the community on this channel. I feel like we may not agree on everything, but I feel like this community right here on this channel, we all want the best for boxing. We all want the best fights, and everyone is down the middle. Everyone's respectful, carries themselves in a proper manner, and for that I'm extremely grateful. You guys have no idea how grateful I am for that, because I see on other channels, and again, I'm not going to name names, but it just feels like a big fucking circle jerk, to be honest, and I'm so fucking grateful. That's not the case on this channel, so yeah, big up to you guys. We may not have the biggest channel on YouTube in regards to boxing, but I feel like we've got one of the best communities, so shout out to you guys. You guys have made this extremely enjoyable, covering boxing, to be honest, and not only that, you guys have pushed me to not only keep creating content, but to do the second channel and things like that. You guys genuinely, I think the world of you guys, so shout out to you guys as well for all of the support that you've shown me in the past few months and years. Big up to you guys, it's much appreciated. Let's finish on a positive, man. Let's finish on a positive, so yeah. But yeah, man, keep tuned, more videos will come. Share your thoughts below, you know, shoot your shit, do your thing. Peace.